No, I've been doing this role for 3 years now. In fact, I've been doing it for so long that I'm about to leave the role and hand it over to somebody else. So that's how long I'm doing it. 3 years. It's a 3-year defined term. I don't know, many of you probably won't know this, but the RCR has an RCR undergraduate steering group. And that was put together some time ago. It's been around for a number of years. I think it's gradually gaining in strength because when we took over, myself and Dan Connolly from Sheffield are actually colleagues on this. I conveniently forget to mention Dan's name. That's reminded me of one occasion. But when we took this over in 2014, we took it over from one individual who's from Liverpool. And he was working with a much smaller group. Our group was a bit bigger. And now, when we're about to hand over later this year, we're handing over to actually quite a big group with representation from the academic committee, 2 trainee representatives, and the lead resides still with the RCR Specialty Training Board. So I think it's developed quite positively over the years. This is what I'm going to talk about in the next, I hope, 20 minutes, not more than that, just to give you an overview. A bit of a background, a few comments about the historical challenges that we face in introducing clinical radiology into the undergraduate medical school curriculum. In other words, the bigger picture. I want to focus a little bit on the RCR undergraduate curriculum as well, because as some of you will know, the second edition has come out earlier on this year, a couple of months ago, or even less than that. And I'll just run you through that very briefly, just to show you where we've changed things a little bit. We haven't made huge modifications. And then I want to also mention the RCR Undergraduate Radiology Societies Association, the URSA, which has been one of the other big focus of our group over the last 3 years. And that's actually coming along quite nicely too. So let's start. The college has not abrogated its responsibility in this area, I must say, because even if you look back more than 3 decades ago, the Education Board, which was the predecessor to the SCB, had produced a report on undergraduate radiology teaching, which was prefaced by this introduction by John Laws, who was the 3rd president of the college, who basically said what you can see on that slide. There's nothing unreasonable there. It's a very balanced comments, and actually have things moved on hugely from what he said at that time. Not really in the sense that these are all still relevant comments today. And if you look at the main findings or main observations of this report, again, if you just run through that yourself, I'm not going to read all the points out to you, but you can hopefully see, again, that a lot of these comments are actually very relevant to what we're even trying to do today. And the question that one has to ask is, have we actually moved much further forwards from where we were in 1981 in terms of how successful have we been in achieving these things? I would argue we have been successful. We can obviously, I can obviously comment from our own experiences here in Leeds. Having more of an overview nationally, I would say that many other centres have also been successful at achieving some of this, but not everywhere. And that's the challenge ultimately. This was a very interesting paper, which was published in Academic Radiology a few years ago, where they conducted a survey of 83 members of the American academic radiology. And they asked them what did they feel were the barriers to greater involvement of radiology and undergraduate teaching. And again, have a look at that for yourselves. A lot of that, could it be represented, or could it be, what does that mean to say?
Could you reproduce this amongst a group of radiologists in the UK? I'm pretty sure you could, yeah? A lot of these, again, comments are very valid, and one of the biggest challenges I think that we face is the lack of time in the medical curriculum, and that's certainly what we keep being told when we try and push the radiology agenda. It's not an unreasonable thing to say, because there are many other subspecialties who also want to get involved in undergraduate teaching, and you could argue quite cogently that radiology is not the most important thing that medical students need to learn. It is one of the important things, perhaps, but I'll leave that in the air for a moment. If you carry on looking at this survey, what else did they say? This is what they thought were the least effective features of radiology undergraduate education: lack of faculty time for teaching and lack of recognition and reward. Again, some people would agree that that's a valid emphasis. What did they feel were the most effective features? Interactive sessions, sessions tailored to the student's level of training, in other words, appropriate level of radiology teaching, and thirdly, of course, the engagement and enthusiasm of the faculty. And I must say, from my own personal experience and from the experience of our colleagues in Leeds who are involved in undergraduate teaching, this has been borne out on more than one occasion, where the feedback we get is that if we are interactive, they like it, and we get positive feedback and they find it valuable. If we tailor the radiology that we teach to the students' level of training, in other words, teach them appropriate stuff, they like it and they find it useful. And if the faculty are enthusiastic and engaged and make it look like it's a good thing to be a radiologist, they like it and they feel that it's valuable. So I think, again, that's why I'm emphasizing this paper, because I think it's really good. And then one of the people who was surveyed, one of the radiologists, wrote this in his free hand feedback. Have a read. I know that more than one of my colleagues will agree with this, and probably I will agree with it too, actually. This is what we do. We do a lot of this in our own time, and, you know, we could potentially have better things to do in our own time. But just to bring it into the RCR once again, we now have an undergraduate radiology microsite on the new college website. Many of you will have seen this. It's fairly easy to find, and it has these sections to it. I'm going to just focus briefly on the undergraduate curriculum, which is now in its second edition, as I've said already. The key aims and objectives of this are fairly straightforward. Don't forget, again, just to set the scene for this, that the directors of undergraduate medical school programs will get numerous documents like this landing on their desk constantly. A lot of them are coming from special interest groups who want to push their agenda in the undergraduate curriculum. And what the few that I've spoken to say is that if it's voluminous, if it's unrealistic, if it's unachievable, it either gets used as a doorstop, or it gets thrown in the bin, or it gets thrown in the fire, depending on which time of the year it is and which sort of medical school you're talking about. Because not every MBCHP program director has a live fire in their office, but some do. And that's the basis of how the college came up with this curriculum back in 2012, which was before my time. But the thought process was that it needs to be brief, it needs to be succinct, and it needs to be achievable within an undergraduate program, along with all its other challenges and all the other things that they have to cram in to those 5 years. So initially this document was only 7 pages long. It's now 11 pages long, because I have a bit of verbal diarrhea as well as when we're writing a bit of diarrhea, so it became a bit longer. But we still tried to keep it short. And it's actually become longer because we've introduced a lot of mapping references, which I'll show you, just to make it a bit stronger from an evidence point of view, or from a sales point of view, if you like. So this is the main key objective, which is to promote teaching and learning of relevant aspects of clinical radiology on graduate level, obviously. The other objectives are, as I've already said, and this is a useful word as well, framework, because this is not really a curriculum. A curriculum does have to be much more voluminous, because it not only should tell you what you should teach, but it should also tell you how you should teach it. But this doesn't say anything of the sort. It doesn't tell you how you should teach it necessarily. It just says, this is what we feel that you should be teaching in the undergraduate curriculum. Bear in mind also that the RCR has absolutely no jurisdiction to tell medical schools what they should teach. No Royal College has. That jurisdiction lies with the GMC. And this is the other thing that we want to do, because one of the things that we're examining in finals is whether the student is ready to work the next day as a foundation year doctor. So we've also focused in on the foundation program curriculum and picked out those things which we think are relevant in there. Now, this is what I was mentioning before. This is the document that medical schools are beholden to in terms of their curriculum, and they map their curriculum to this. I don't know, again, how many of you are aware, but this is currently under review and open to submissions from key stakeholders, so the college is feeding into that. The original version of this and this version, which is the 2015 version, does not mention the word radiology even once. Okay, so if you did a free text search to find the word radiology, the number would come as 0. There is nothing, no mention of radiology. The only mention it has in the 3 outcomes are these, where you could link in the undergraduate curriculum. Again, you can read that for yourselves. There's not much that's actually required of medical schools, if you see it another way, in terms of how much radiology or imaging they need to put into their curriculum. The foundation program curriculum, on the other hand, has a lot more references. Section 1, Section 2, Section 3, and Section 3 continued. This can go on forever. which is why our document went into 11 pages, because there's like 2 pages of this. But there are lots of areas where you can map the RCR undergraduate curriculum to the foundation program curriculum, which is encouraging. So the RCR curriculum from the outset has only had 3 sections in it. One is fundamental principles, and some of the things included in that are listed there. Emergency conditions, where we this time added in a little bit about a role of CT in trauma, particularly trying to emphasize the role of radiology in polytrauma, that they're an integral part of that important clinical presentation or clinical scenario. And the common presentations remain in terms of systems-based pathology and imaging, CVS, GI, neuro, etc., etc. And we made some mention about ultrasound because we know that that's here anyway, so regardless of whether we want to deliver it or not, our clinician colleagues are already delivering it. So we wrote a fairly blithe statement saying that we want to encourage an expanded role for the appropriate use of ultrasound, but we accept that that's dependent on the resources and the workforce and the manpower or womanpower that you have available. And also that it's probably, even now, in medical schools, still in the realms of the early adopters rather than everybody doing it. We mentioned in interventional radiology as well, along those lines that you can see there. And we also mentioned simulation training and the potential benefit or role that that could have and how radiology could be included in that. But what do we see in terms of this curriculum being used in practice? Well, I think this is one of the visual ways of depicting this, which is sometimes referred to as a core plus options model, where you can see that undergraduate radiology teaching has a number of components, some of which in your medical school you may wish to consider as part of the core curriculum, but because of those pressures where we can't include everything, you have to provide some other vehicle in an extracurricular way where students who are genuinely interested in radiology can access more information, can build a professional relationship with radiologists so that they can get involved in projects, et cetera, and also learn more about careers in radiology. So again, I'd leave you to just have a look at that for a second, but I'm going to go through some of those in a little bit more detail, but not much. So radiology attachments, you probably already heard about this, but these are one very effective way of bringing the students into the department. There are challenges with doing this, of course, and I'm not going to go into that in great detail because we all can imagine what those are. But this has been very successful in many teaching hospitals, particularly, and has been going for many years, for example, in Sheffield, in Cardiff. There are several hospitals who've been doing this for a while. They're very popular, and Leeds, of course, under the leadership of Ian, who's led this, Ian Craven, has developed this for the first time this year, and it's been a success on the whole. We've learned some things, we can improve some things, but it's been good, and that's definitely one way of doing this. Another way, which is really highly valued by the students, is of course face-to-face teaching. You've got to have some face-to-face teaching. You can develop all the electronic resources you want to and reinvent the wheel and so on, but if you don't have a good face-to-face interaction with your students, you're kind of missing a trick there, really. Because this is how they get interested in our specialty, this is how they want to learn more, and they form those relationships with radiologists, professional relationships, I hasten to add, where they can get a step or a foot into the department. And this has been running in Leeds for 5 years now. We've completed the 5th cycle. I was just telling one of my colleagues earlier before he came into the room that when we did this for the first year, we had an average attendance of 8 students per session out of a possible 75. And it was, felt a bit of a damp damp squib, really. But we persevered, and my colleagues persevered. There are several of us who were involved in this. And this year, and actually from the 3rd year onwards, we've had an average attendance per session of about 45 students. And it gets fantastic reviews, and it's been recognized on multiple levels as being very positive. And I want to draw your attention particularly to this comment you can see here. And, I could have filled a whole presentation with the positive comments that I've received, but I won't do that. I did that on Tuesday, actually, those of you who are in the academy. But that's been very positive. One of the other things that's been really impressive here in Leeds, this has been led by Dominic Barron. Dominic is in the audience. Take a bow, Dominic. Where are you? I can't see. Oh, there he is. Yeah. Dominic Barron has put a huge amount of effort with some of our trainees and also the medical school technology-enhanced learning team to put together a virtual case archive, which has been accessed thousands of times by our students. And what was particularly pleasing to see, because remember, again, as educationalists or people involved in education, you know this well, that if students know they're going to be assessed on something, that's going to drive their learning. So cases from this virtual archive are now turning up in the exam, which is fantastic. I was involved, like some of you, in the OSCEs this week, and I was delighted to see for the first time in an OSCE station where, in addition to testing their neurological examination skills and diagnostic skills, from a clinical point of view, there was a CT head. In fact, there were 2 CT heads there for discussion as well, one showing a barn door ischemic infarct and the other one showing a hemorrhage, and then leading on to a discussion about whether you would give antiplatelet therapy or not. And it was fantastic. It was a very integrated station, very fair station, and all the students, I think I saw 15 or 16 students, performed extremely well, and they got the radiology right in every single case. So it is really, really good to see this coming integrated into the exams, because that's the ultimate challenge. And Dominic and his team won an award this year for this. I was also there that evening, but I made a sharp exit because everyone was being silly at this time of the night. And being a responsible lead clinician, I felt that I should not be in this photograph. But it was great. It was a great evening. A lot of success in this trust was celebrated, and it was great to see education, and particularly undergraduate education, being recognized, and the efforts of people like Dominic being recognized in this atmosphere, very positive atmosphere. There are lots of resources out there, by the way, which are now aligning with the RCR curriculum. Many of you will be familiar with these. This is the Radiology Masterclass, which is fantastic. It's one of the best ones out there. It's designed and run and edited by a radiologist from Salisbury who was a graphic designer before he became a doctor. So this is why it's very sharp and really good. And so I'm certainly very impressed with that. So I'm showing you this because you don't need to reinvent the wheel, okay? So we've developed an archive, whatever, but actually, if you just wanted to direct your students in a blended environment to electronic resources which are out there, these are already available, yes? You just need to familiarize yourself with what's out there. This is University of Bristol, who have Hippocrates, which is, again, fantastic. A lot of effort's gone into that, and it's really good. And Radiopedia, Jeremy Jones, one of our former trainees, is now working on this. I think this is a bit of work in progress, but it's coming along very well, and they're also aligning this with the RCR curriculum. So good to see that as well. I want to finally mention the Undergraduate Radiology Societies Association. This is a way that at a lot of medical schools, it's felt that if you want to get past that barrier that you have in terms of time in the curriculum, you have to provide something extracurricular for those students who are particularly interested in pursuing a career in your specialty. So the college has taken this on board. The Royal College of Surgeons have been running this kind of thing for many years, long before us, but we've now come on board with this. And and the college is providing some membership benefits, etc. Obviously, otherwise why would they join? But no money. Well, indirectly money, I suppose. We started off with about 4 member societies. We now have whatever the number is on there, 15, is it? 15, 13, whatever. But many societies. This is still work in progress, because the challenge with these undergraduate societies is that there's a high turnover. So you'll find that the students who are leading one year are not there the next. And unless they keep the college informed, it's difficult to sometimes keep them in the loop and stay in the loop with them. Leeds has a society, for example, which is called the Exposure Society. When they thought of this name, I suggested to them it sounds like a nightclub or like a strip joint. But they went with this because they like that, and they thought it would draw in more members. And it's kind of worked, because the society now has 68 members, having started with about 5. So it's all coming on. And the society lays on a number of events every year. Increasingly, the attendance is getting better. It's challenging to bring the students into the university out of hours, but we're doing better. The revision lecture is very popular. So I've done the revision lecture for 4 years in a row now. And this year, in the medical lecture theatre, there were no seats and people were sitting on the stairs. So that's how popular I am. But it's actually the fear of the exam which makes them turn up to that. But also recognizing that radiology is now being represented in the exam. That's really important, I think. And so, let's keep that going. We had a meeting of the IRSA last year, which was in June, which was very positive. We all felt, a really positive vibe around this. The president turned up, all the officers turned up to support us, and it was great. This year we have another meeting. Now some of you may have seen this. There are still places available on this, by the way, which is why I'm showing you this. It's at the college, it's free. You just have to make your way there and make your way back. But there are still places for undergraduate educators or radiologists who are interested in undergraduate radiology. It's 1st of June on a Thursday, and I've already planned the drinks afterwards. So if you're interested, you know, there's free drinks. Okay, so in conclusion, just 3 main points, I think. The curriculum, we certainly feel, provides a sound and practical framework for greater inclusion of radiology into undergraduate curriculum, medical school curriculum. A lot of the undergraduate, certainly program directors that we've spoken to, at least 3 that I've spoken to, seem to agree with that, so that's good. The initial step, though, as we found here in Leeds, is really to bring about a change in culture, whereby you're engaging radiologists and also non-radiologists to understand the value of having clinical radiologists involved in teaching our students. And of course, you need to engage the students in the process too. One of the things that drove us, for example, to doing the Breakfast Club or whatever, was actually our students were demanding, why do they not have regular teaching program in radiology? So, you know, it's got to be driven by somewhere. And if the students are driving that as a demand, that's hugely positive. And we have to deliver. And clearly, you need some coordination, some collaboration, multifaceted approach. Dominic Barron's our undergraduate lead here in Leeds. Ian and I have also contributed to that. And I think, you know, from what I can see, having been a consultant here for almost 10 years now, there's been a dramatic change in our involvement in the undergraduate scene. And that's been fantastic. And I'd like other people to emulate that around the country. Many acknowledgements. I won't list all of them. But thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.